Cocote is like, it's part of what I've been investigating. I've been making films in different countries, and I'm from the Dominican Republic, and so Cocote, it was like, it was time for me to make a film there, and so I kept working in these investigations that I've been doing through religion and the problem of identity and the complexity of talking about identity in a country that, or in a region that it's kind of impossible to. So Cocote starts from that investigation, and then of course, like every time you go to a place in a specific, that thing will give you their own stories and their own narrative. So in that case, in my own country, Dominican Republic, it was through religion that I was gonna be able to start creating a conversation with my society. I mean, for the English speakers, it's a little bit more complex because, it's not Spanish, but the Spanish, and every language has a rule, and like the correct way of saying Cocote is Cocote with a G. So in this case, Cocote, because we have two different ways. We have the neck, it means neck, no? But we have cuello, which means the neck of a human, and Cocote, or cogote, or pescuezo, means the neck of an animal. So when you refer to Cocote in the Dominican, in my country, when you mention Cocote to the neck of a human, there is a violence that is implicit, that it's something that is gonna break, like kind of like the neck of a chicken, not the neck of a. I mean, you just have neck in English, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's already a word that it's already mulatto and somehow. I don't think I'm interested in spirituality. I think I'm interested in the religion because they are institutions that produce knowledge and produce morality and produce in politics and somehow. The idea of what is good or what is wrong, it comes from this institution, even though when colonization and imperialism, also they fly through their churches. So what you see from one side is the Catholicism, a syncretic Catholicism, where it comes from, the evangelization of the whole, the whole colony, the whole conquer of the Americas. And then the Protestant church, what is going to come, what those churches come from the United States, which is a Protestant church because it was a colony from the UK. And when they started to become an empire, a horrible empire who has been all over the Caribbean and Central America and South America, and now in the Arabic countries and all these things, they also travel with the churches. So the Protestant churches in the Dominican Republic, which came around 1965, I mean institutionalized in 1965, through the biggest occupation of the U.S. Army in a Latin American country. Protestantism has an engaging with poverty, because it was the opposite of Catholicism, of the opulence of Catholicism. So, in somehow, the Protestant churches in the United States also have that kind of premise somehow, like working in communities and all these things. So the problem with this is that the right wings, like the most conservative and right wings ideas of what is the United States, impregnated in the Protestant churches. And when they came to the Latin America, they went to the masses. Now, after 40, 50 years, we are dealing with this problem. And what I said is kind of an extension of the arm of capitalism into this country. So the opposition between these two churches not only are there nothing has to do with the spirituality somehow. It has to do with how they are producing morality and culture, and how they're producing knowledge somehow. So this is a very new topic, so actually, and you have the case of Brazil, that the right wing representatives are evangelicals, and when you have different type of religions where, like in the Catholicism and the syncretic Catholicism, where the African roots had to hide through Catholic science, otherwise they were killed as slave. But somehow, because it has been so many years, like 400 years, 500 years, actually there was a new culture happening there. So the main opposition to those syncretism that not only happened with the black people, with African people, but also with indigenous people, and it will be satanized, is going to be the Protestant churches from the United States, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, the Pentecostal, which is the case of my main character. So this is a very complicated subject matter, especially when the Protestant church is getting to power. Like you got, in Brazil, you got a very good example, because they have people in the center that are represented by those churches, and they represent like the most reactionary ideas. So that's why it's important, Cocote. It's one of the first films that actually is dealing with this. And in Guatemala, there is 70% of the population is Protestant, and that happened also with Guatemala as being one of the most most impacted country by the U.S. imperialism. So this is what is important for me, more than spirituality. I think it's both, and it has to be both, otherwise it's going to become fake. One thing is, if we are doing film from peripheral countries, and even when we are doing films in the centers of, like London, New York, United States, whatever, but we are representing invisible people, invisible communities, it is very hard for me to understand why we need to do a certain type of cinema that I believe that is a hegemonic way of making film. This idea of what cinema is also it's what the oppressor says, that what is cinema. And the oppressor, not only Hollywood, oppressor, the academia, everything. So if we are representing invisible communities, we need to find a way to break those rules somehow. And I can assure you that if we, in the process of representation, if we actually take in consideration and into negotiation the subject that is being filmed and me that I'm filming, if we had created dialogue, how it is it that we need to direct those representation, we're gonna have to change things. Otherwise, it's a mode of representation that has been established to talk about these things. So for me, it was when I was in LA studying in Cal Arts, for me, I got into fight with a lot of people, like black people that I was like, Afro-Americans, filmmakers that are, oh yes, we want more space in Hollywood, but why do you want to do films with the aesthetic of the oppressor? That it's already racist, it's already simplifying entertainment, and in terms of Hollywood, it's simplification of issues of identities that are invisible to the world. So just for that, we need to start thinking how are we going to be represented. On the other hand, I come from experimental film. So experimental films, in a very simple meaning, is to experiment, no? So I'm already like this idea of, you know, mixing formats, colors, all these things that you have seen. It's a very powerful position into sound, because if we want to break languages, perhaps we can start breaking the hierarchy between image and sound, which image is always the most important thing. So perhaps sound can take over, and perhaps we can create fresh ideas in terms of missing sound or whatever. So I understand Cocote is the most narrative film that I've done. According to my films before. So I understand that the classical way of reading cinema or narrative films is that any aesthetic decision, any formal decision, has to be according to the narrative, to serve the narrative. So in the moment you don't do that, this becomes arbitrary. So in that sense, it is arbitrary in terms of Cocote. It doesn't have anything to do with the subject matter in terms of plot. The plot, the idea of why we change format doesn't have anything to do with the plot. But the plot itself, I don't care in terms of classical way of thinking of plot. I think those changes has to do with language and how I am trying to start having a investigation, even linguistically speaking. How am I going to do a cinematic language? I believe that in this chaos of formats and colors and almost a film that also not only, that's the easiest part, but if we see how I'm going to mix also mode of productions, like sometimes the production that it looks like we are in a documentary, or this is a fiction, or in the way that I'm going to deal with the narrative. To become with a genuine hybrid, film. I need to do all these things, but I do also believe that that's the Caribbean somehow. This is how I talk, and that's why in all my films I put cinema conversación, which is the conceptual idea of what I have of the film. Cinema conversación is conversational cinema, because for me it's the same way that my orality, which is a Dominican orality, like so far from the correct idea of Spanish, maybe in Jamaica, and you have it also with the English. It's like in the Caribbean, it's so old somehow. We've been there so forget it, but it was everything, where everything started in terms of modern ideas of capitalism, and even when the UK or French or the Spanish actually became empire somehow, everything started in this war in the Caribbean by taking islands. So it's kind of an old part of the world in terms of where the new concepts of race has begun. So the amount of mix that are in this thing in terms of language, like the French colonies, they have Creole, which is an invented language. It's a new language, So how, for me, it's kind of impossible not to, to make films in a far from what is the rule. So in the beginning, it was intuition. It was in the way that images were coming out from me, And then, of course, you go to the school, you go to academia and blah, 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 and you start intellectualizing all these things. So that's why I say both, because I need to maintain this into this jazzy way that you said, that someone said that. But also like knowing what and respect to the things that I'm doing. I'm not going to go and take something, I'm just going to do a crazy shit, and then, and I forgot about the people that I'm actually, filming. So I think it's both, and in the way that it works, I don't know exactly, there's a lot of intuition into it,
¡Otra!
Yeah, I mean, like, that's why I told you that also the production had to, you know, become hybrid somehow. You know, we have this in this very scripted scenes, like in a very classical way, that the camera is there. I choose my frame, I choose my lenses, right? And then, you know, the photography, the DP makes the lights, okay, action, cut, another one, you know? So there was this classical fiction, you know, whatever, process, right? But when in terms of that, imagine if I do this in you know, en una novena, en los rezos, in the way, you know, in those rituals, it will kill everything. But at the same time, if I do the pure documentary, I don't feel ethical correct, because if it's documentary, I'm supposed to go to a real funeral and just shot, and then use these images to serve my film. And for the first time I had money, and I could pay these people. So okay, how can I pay the community that I know for a long time? Some of them are my friends or whatever. How can I pay them, and how can I make a film? But it's still like I want them to be free, to be liberated by those drums and all these things. So what I did basically is that I remember, you know, like the technical things that we have, like for example here in the studio. So basically we, in the house, in this location, we plugged the house full of microphones, and we had a lot of the, you know, took everything into one, una consola, how do you say that in English? Like the console, like where all the cables of sound comes. And then I was I had a camera, and I was in the women room, and the DP was in the part that was not, you know, that it was more ecstatic, where they just were singing, because, you know, it was too overwhelming for him. He was not even from the Dominican Republic. Actually, I only used my material because I come from make my film by myself. So in that moment, it's a relationship that I have, me and the camera and the subject matter, you know. So it was kind of hard for me. That's why I didn't use any of his material. So what we did, because I know very well the ritual. So it's a Catholic ritual, which is 9 days, una novena. For 9 days you pray so the dead can go to heaven, right? So in those 9. In the modern way of Catholicism, in a white Catholicism, they do 9 mice. So it's 9 Sundays. And you go to the church, and the priest will be there, whatever. And so in here, what I did is, like in those days, there's divided in 5 stages. So so each stage is, you know, part, it's 2 hours and a half. So I divide, like for 5 days, and I was just like doing 2:30 p.m. action, and we don't stop until, so that freshness came. It was also for me very surprising how can they were able to connect to their own deaths and cry for real, and it was very strange. And but at the same time, I was expecting that, because I mean, I'm Dominican and I know the trance, and so I also work with the professional actors like Judith Rodriguez, which plays Karina in the film. I made 2 castings to her. One, there was the fictional one, and then how can she receive trance? So it was a very kind of, psychedelic casting that I did with her. So that's what I was telling you before. Like in the moment that you have to actually negotiate with this community, you're gonna have to change the way that you make film. I mean, I cannot come from the book, you know, like from what's the stupid guy from Hollywood that makes this book that is, okay, in 10 minutes there's a twist and all. Yeah, how can I do this? You know, where's the twist here? It's just like people fucking screaming and like jumping into my own camera. You know, I'm in a known, you know, I'm very far from any hegemonic way of making cinema. You know, I'm like far away. not necessarily to me and my mom, my dad, because I come from a, I mean, agnostic family, like very left wing, whatever. Um, I mean, it has to do with me because my dad is a sociologist, and also we're, you know, their friends were like, I mean, the left basically in Latin America was this group of people that are always was trying to bring the folk, you know, like the periphery back to, you know, to the real traditions. You know, it was the left that was also fighting to bring those type of that music to actually make it this is Dominican, this is the group. So I grew up in that part of the society where always were pro or African, you know, this descendant and everything. I have some aunts that convert to Pentecostal, and they became kind of, you know, they, as Patria says in the river scene, like, you once you convert, you forget that you have family, and somehow it is true, you know. But I mean, nothing happened to me like that, you know. But somehow I am connected to many of these things that are, and pretty close actually, you know. Privileged people coming from the right, they don't have anything. They don't have problems with it, like, to become a better society. You know, they're good, they're empowered, they're cool, they have money, you know. So this identity conversation or dilemma somehow belongs to the left, and I'm son of two lefty people, you know. I think it doesn't dialogue with the film that they're doing there at all. I believe that of what I have read from the newspaper and the critics that are there, I mean, they are seeing the Cocote as a film that, you know, they say they have said very beautiful things about the film, like in terms of this is the first film that we actually feel represented. So I hope that Cocote, in that narrative, I hope that Cocote actually can bring some, you know, issues into some of the filmmakers, but maybe not for the people that are already there making money with cinema. Maybe for, you know, the students and young people that are coming, but they don't care. We have right now a very shallow society. I mean, that's, I think, like one of the main characteristic of the U.S. imperialism is in Latin America was to eliminate a part of the society that was thinking by imposing a dictator, you know, and create a dictatorship, and you know, they were supporting dictatorships and dictators in Latin America, and then like so, and through them they kill a lot of the young people, like, that were thinking, and also, and then through that they create like a new oligarchy that was pro United States and pro those things. So because Dominican Republic and some of their countries in Central America are so small, the impact was too strong, because actually nothing as a resistance has came out in a long time, and the north of these cities is Miami, and it's a very shallow society somehow. It's a very with a very high level of consumism and apolitical, and you know, and then there's a mass of a huge mass of poverty that just have been that the role models are the rich people, and so the chains of you know of the money culture somehow, it's so, you know, there's no space to think. But it's interesting because this film, I mean, I didn't have the money to get to the popular classes, but like when I had the small opportunities that I have, they actually really like the film more than these comedies that are horrible. And the of course the upper middle class and the high class, they consider this like not even Dominican, this is Haitian. Because every time every black manifestation of us is not African, it's from Haiti. Because they're racist to Haiti, but they're racist to black people, No, I mean, like, it's kind of simple. It's pretty boring, my answer to that. I mean, I went to a school that there was a lot of art, and I was interested I was interested in writing, I was interested in theater, I was interested in, there was a moment that I was interested in photography, I was always interested in music, of course, and I watched a lot of films since I was a kid. And when I started to grow up, I think like there was a moment that I mean, I love cinema because it's this art where you can combine all this, and that's why perhaps I went to study films in an art context, because when you go to make films in film schools, you are studied in the industry way, like okay, you're a cameraman, you are the sound man, you're the I wanted to do it all because I really like, and when I do sound in my film, I'm thinking in music, when I'm writing, I'm thinking in all the writers that I like, and the dialogue. So for me, it was very important for me I think cinema, it was the place that I was combining all this, and I think that's why, I mean, of course, like doing this type of films, you need to be young somehow because it's too much work, in terms of like physically. So I have the strength to do it. I still want to make these films where I do kind of everything, because it's a very personal to me, like I don't want to be working with like with these big crews and everything. Oof, what I've been doing in my life is watching films, so the list could be very long. Yeah. I can tell you the films that I really loved last year, which is Arabia from Afonso Ulloa y Joao. It's an amazing film. It's a beautiful film. Of course, I mean, for me, it was important to see the avant-garde movements in Latin America. Like, I think people should see all these films, like Glauber Rocha, Cinema Novo in Brazil, like the imperfect cinema in Cuba with this amazing, with Alvarez Alea, like all these guys that are amazing to watch. I really like Jean Rouch. I think it's a guy that he's making like very interesting films, but with a lot of humors, but with heavy political issues, and it's kind of strange because it's another white man, French guy, just making films in Africa. But I think it's a very interesting way to how he deals with it, and like he actually, I think it's a very nice. I mean, there's now a trend into. There's always been a trend from European filmmakers to go to third world countries and make films, So I think he's a guy who actually, create a dilemma that you can learn a lot from it. I love, in the more narrative way, I think all the films of Jim Jarmusch, people should see Jarmusch a lot. His particular poetry, he's amazing. And I like what is happening in Portugal too, with João Pedro Rodrigues and Miguel Gomes, João Salavisa. I think they are doing great films, and of course Pedro Costa, but I don't like him. as a person, but his films are really good. He's whatever, and I think arrogancy, it's anti-revolutionary. I like a lot. I love. I really like that film from last year, Good Luck, Ben Russell's film, the new film of Ben Russell. That was I think it's his best film. I really like that film a lot, and there's a film from a young Argentinian filmmaker, Teddy Williams, that his film is El auge del humano. I don't know what was translated in English. That was a great film, and it was a great film actually within in the way that the films is being done in Argentina. He changed things there, and of course Lucrecia Martel. People should see Lucrecia Martel. People should see Rekman. Rekman is amazing, and Meteor. It's a film it's a Turkish film that actually showed yesterday in Frames of Representation. I saw it in Locarno last year. I think it's an amazing film. An amazing film. It's a very interesting film. How can how to deal with beauty, poetry, war, and coming from. He's Turkish, and he's talking about all the problems that they have with the Kurdish, and and for some, especially from the correctness of the states, the United States, and this stupid political correctness. This is like, it's like impregnated the whole world now, and everybody is in with this radicalism. Like, oh, if you're not a woman, you cannot talk. You cannot can make films about. I think I think this film put this discussion, this stupid discussion somehow, in a very interesting way, because there's no a single moment that the film is not unethical. So I think you can be ethical. I think you can be political responsible, and in to represent the otherness. I think it's a very stupid thing that we can only represent our own group of ethnicity. I think we need more. We need more people from other ethnicity to talk about other issues, And this is actually real plurality and diversity. First of all, I think people should make. People need to shoot. I think this is something that it's a very simple advice, but you cannot. I went to 3 different film schools, and you can. It's incredible the amount of people that do not film anything. It's amazing how that happened, especially films that are coming from a very theoretical background, that people are so scared to put a camera. And I learned something very specific, that you can, like the big topics, the big political topics in cinema, I think you can reach them from both places, theoretical and the praxis. And every time I see students that are like with these political issues, where they this theory somehow distance them from actually the act of going and film, and actually when they are there, they're very passive because they're afraid of even moving the camera. I think for me it is important to reach those political ideas through both, from reading but also to making, and that's why all my problems that I have in contemporary and postmodern cinema right now is the passivity, the lack of position somehow in that director, always like showing this description like a vitrina, so go and film. I think like if you go and film, you're gonna discover a lot of things. It's as simple as that. You wanna play guitar, you go and play guitar. You play la pentatónica fucking every day, man. It's the same.